The rain, a relentless, icy curtain, hammered against the attic window, each drop a tiny, frantic fist against the glass. It wasn't the storm that had me pressed against the damp, splintered floorboards, though. It was the echo of my father's voice, a raw, guttural thing that had ripped through the house like a seismic tremor, followed by the sickening thud of a fist against flesh, a sound I knew too well. Disgusting, filthy. He'd bellowed, the words ricocheting up the stairwell, each syllable a barbed hook tearing into my soul. I'd always known deep down that the way my heart stuttered when Liam smiled, the way his laughter was a symphony only I could truly hear, was normal. Not in their world, anyway. I'd built a fortress of lies, a fragile, trembling facade to survive, but the bricks were crumbling, the cracks widening with every stolen glance, every shared whispered secret. Liam, with his eyes the color of twilight and his hands that felt like warm, steady anchors in the storm of my confusion, was my forbidden son. And today the sun had dared to peek through the clouds. My father had found my sketchbook, the one where Liam's face was etched in every line, every shadow, every tender curve of his lips. He found the poem, the one about the way Liam's touch felt like coming home after a lifetime lost at sea. And then he'd found Liam hiding in the garden shed, the boy who dared to love me back. Liam, who'd kissed me not in some dark, clandestine corner, but in the blinding, unapologetic light of day, right there under the ancient oak tree where the world could see. It wasn't a gentle, hesitant kiss. It was a declaration, a rebellion against the suffocating silence, a burning promise. But the price of that promise was etched in the red, angry marks on Liam's cheek, the marks my father had left. Suddenly, the attic, my sanctuary, felt like a prison. The rain, once a melancholy backdrop, now felt like a cruel, mocking audience. I wasn't scared of the rain or the thunder, but I was terrified of what would happen next. I had always thought that home was where your family was, where you belonged, but as I watched the rain blur the distant lights of the town, I knew that my home was nowhere in this house, nor in this town. It was in the stolen glances, the shared laughter, the forbidden touch, the kiss. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I would find that home again, even if it meant burning everything else down. The twist: Liam wasn't just my friend, he was the son of my father's rival, a man my father hated with a venom that ran deep and cold. He was the one person my father would never accept, making our love a declaration of war. And the kiss, the one that sparked my father's rage, was not a secret, but a public act of defiance, planned by Liam to force my father's hand. He wanted to steal me away to build a new home, a new life, away from the hatred and the rain. The attic air hung thick and heavy, a suffocating blanket of dust and unspoken dread. Each creak of the old house was a hammer blow against my already fractured composure. I clutched the worn leather of my sketchbook, the pages now a painful testament to a love that had bloomed in the shadows. I traced the lines of Liam's face, the memory of his lips on mine still a burning brand against my skin. It wasn't just the kiss, the physical act, that had shattered my world, it was the raw, unadulterated truth of it. It was the way his eyes, when they met mine, held not pity or shame, but a fierce, unwavering love. A love that dared to challenge the very foundations of my existence. I remembered the way he'd stood defiant, even as my father's rage filled the garden, his voice unwavering as he declared, "I love him and I won't hide it." Those words, simple yet powerful, were a seismic shift, a tearing away of the veil I'd worn for so long. The silence that followed was more deafening than any scream, a pregnant pause before the storm. I knew with a chilling certainty that this wasn't just about a kiss. It was about control, about the suffocating grip of expectations that had bound me for my entire life. My father, a man who prided himself on his rigid morality, his unwavering adherence to tradition, saw Liam as a threat, an infection that needed to be purged. He saw my love for Liam as a betrayal, a stain on his perfect, carefully constructed world. I had always yearned for a home, a place where I belonged, but now the very concept of home felt like a cruel joke. The house, with its familiar creaks and shadows, had become a battleground, a place where love was a crime. I found a small, hidden compartment in the wall, a secret my mother had shown me when I was a child. Inside, a small, worn wooden box containing a letter and a faded photograph. The letter, in my mother's elegant script, spoke of a love she'd been forced to bury, a love for another woman, a love that had been deemed unnatural. The photograph showed two women, their hands intertwined, their eyes filled with a love that mirrored my own. My mother's secret, a hidden truth that had been buried for years, was a chilling echo of my own reality. She had found a home, not in the house, but in the love she'd been forced to abandon. The twist here is that the letter wasn't a confession, but a warning. A warning that my father had known about her love and that he had used it to break her to force her to conform. The second twist, the photo, showed that Liam's mother and mine had been lovers, and that our love was not just a rebellion, but a continuation of a forbidden love that had been violently ripped apart. Our kiss was not just a declaration of love, but a reclaiming of a stolen legacy. The revelation in the hidden box was a cold, hard slap, a brutal awakening from the naive dream I'd clung to. My mother's hidden love, her forced conformity, wasn't just a parallel to my own situation, it was a terrifying blueprint. The fear that had been a dull ache in my chest now blossomed into a raging inferno. The attic, once a refuge, now felt like a tomb, each dusty beam a reminder of the secrets buried within these walls. I understood now with a clarity that chilled me to the bone that my father's rage wasn't just about my love for Liam. It was about his own suffocating fear, his desperate attempt to control a narrative that was spiraling out of his grasp. He saw in me the same rebellion, the same defiance that he had so brutally crushed in my mother. He wouldn't let me escape the same fate. I had to get to Liam to warn him, to protect him from the storm that was about to break. I scrambled to my feet, the worn floorboards cold beneath my bare feet, the letter and photograph clutched in my trembling hands. I had to tell Liam about my mother, about the twisted legacy of our love, about the danger that loomed. I had to tell him that our kiss, the moment that had ignited this chaos, was more than just a declaration of love. It was a battle cry, a challenge to the very foundations of their world. I slipped out of the attic window, the rain a cold, stinging veil against my skin, and descended the old oak tree, the rough bark scraping against my palms. The garden, once a place of stolen moments and whispered secrets, was now a scene of desolation, the overturned flower pots and broken branches a testament to the violence that had erupted. My father was gone, but the echo of his rage hung heavy in the air, a suffocating presence that clung to every shadow. I ran, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum, the rain blurring my vision, the fear a cold, sharp blade against my skin. I found Liam at his house, his mother's house, the house that used to be my mother's childhood home. He was packing a bag, his face etched with a grim determination. He looked up as I burst through the door, his eyes widening in alarm. He took the letter, read it, then looked at me. He told me that his mother had told him a different story, a story where my mother was the one that left, that she abandoned him and his mother. The twist: my mother's letter was a coded message, a map not to a place but to a person, a woman, a powerful figure in the underground LGBTQ plus resistance, a woman who had helped my mother escape. And this woman was Liam's aunt. The second twist: Liam already knew everything, that his mother and mine were lovers, and that our love was a continuation of that love. He was waiting for me not to run but to fight. Liam's revelation hit me like a physical blow, a wave of shock that threatened to drown me in its icy depths. He wasn't just a boy I loved, he was a key, a link to a hidden world, a world where love wasn't a crime but a rebellion. The map, the coded message in my mother's letter, wasn't just a guide, it was an invitation, a call to arms. His aunt, a figure shrouded in mystery, was the leader of a network that had sheltered those deemed different, those forced to live in the shadows. The kiss, the catalyst for this entire unraveling, wasn't just a moment of love, it was a spark, an ignition of a long dormant fire. Liam had known, had planned, had orchestrated this confrontation, not out of recklessness, but out of a desperate need to break the chains that bound us. He had planned for my father to find out, to force the issue, to expose the rot that festered beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect world. The rain, still a relentless torrent, beat against the windows, a constant reminder of the storm raging within and without. We were no longer just two boys in love, we were soldiers on a battlefield fighting for a future where love could breathe freely. Liam explained that my mother had been part of this resistance, a woman who had dared to love and to fight until my father found out and broke her spirit and then lied about her leaving. The letter, he said, was a last, desperate attempt to reach me, to guide me towards the truth. He showed me a hidden compartment in his mother's study, a secret room filled with books, maps, and coded messages. It was a war room, a command center for a resistance that had been operating in the shadows for decades. We were not alone, not isolated in our struggle. He showed me a hidden passage, a route to a safe house, a place where we could plan, where we could fight. He told me that my father wouldn't stop, that he would hunt us down, that he would try to erase us from existence. He also said that my father had allies, people in positions of power who shared his views, and that they would stop at nothing to maintain the status quo. The twist: Liam's aunt wasn't just a leader, she was my mother's former lover, the woman in the photograph. The second twist, the safe house wasn't just a refuge. It was a training ground, a place where we would learn to fight, to defend ourselves, to become the weapons that would dismantle their world. The kiss, he said, had been the first shot, the first act of defiance, and now we would finish what we started. The hidden passage, a dark, damp tunnel beneath the house, felt like a descent into the underworld, a symbolic shedding of the old skin, a rebirth into something new. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and forgotten secrets, the silence broken only by the rhythmic drip of water, a steady, ominous pulse. Liam's hand, warm and strong in mine, was my anchor, my guide through the darkness. The safe house, when we finally emerged, was a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere of my father's house. It was a haven, a sanctuary filled with the warmth of shared stories and the quiet strength of unwavering solidarity. Faces, etched with the scars of their own battles, turned towards us, eyes filled with a knowing understanding. Liam's aunt, a woman with eyes that held the weight of 1,000 untold stories, greeted us with a quiet dignity, her voice a low, resonant hum that filled the room with a sense of calm. She spoke of my mother not as a victim, but as a warrior, a woman who had fought for love, for freedom, for a world where her children could live without fear. She told me that the kiss, the act that had ignited this war, was a legacy, a continuation of my mother's fight. The training began, a brutal, relentless process of physical and mental fortification. We learned to fight not with fists and weapons, but with words, with knowledge, with the unwavering power of truth. We learned to dismantle their lies, to expose the cracks in their carefully constructed facade. We were becoming weapons not of destruction, but of liberation. The days blurred into weeks, the weeks into months, the rain outside a constant, mournful backdrop to our relentless training. We learned that my father's allies were powerful, deeply entrenched in the systems that governed our lives. They were the gatekeepers, the guardians of a world built on lies and oppression. We also learned that we were not alone, that the resistance was vast, a network of hidden allies, of whispered truths, of stolen moments of love. The final confrontation was not a battle of swords and shields, but a war of words, a public dismantling of their lies. We exposed their hypocrisy, their corruption, their cruelty. We showed them the faces of those they had condemned, the lives they had destroyed. And then we showed them our love not as a weakness, but as a weapon, a force that could not be denied. The final twist, my father in the end didn't fight us. He broke. He confessed to everything, not out of remorse, but out of a desperate attempt to cling to the remnants of his shattered world. He told us that he had always loved my mother, but that his love had been twisted by fear, by a desperate need to control. He admitted that he had been afraid of our love, afraid of what it represented, afraid of the change it would bring. The final, devastating twist was that the day Liam kissed me was not just the day I knew I was home, but the day I realized I had to build a new one. Home wasn't a place or a person, but a fight, a rebellion, a declaration of love that echoed through the ruins of their world, creating a new one from the ashes.